Well, we've been warning you about this for, I guess, the last year or two in relation to the boats. Once it was announced by the incoming Albanese government that TPVs were gone, temporary protection visas, well, we knew we were in strife because they are a very vital part of Operation Sovereign Borders. We talk about offshore processing, we talk about the other matters involving turnbacks, but TPVs meant that the people involved couldn't travel here and stay here. They couldn't have family reunions. It's just the way it was going to be. However, that went by the wayside when they said, oh, we're going to have a Clayton's Sovereign Borders. What we're going to do is we're going to keep this and that, but get rid of TPVs. The story today by Simon Benson and Ben Packham in The Australian tells it all. The Albanese government is bracing for a potential surge in asylum seeker boats as it fulfills its election pledge to end the use of temporary protection visas, paving the way for 19,000 refugees who arrive by sea to stay permanently in Australia. Now, that's one thing. I note that Jackie Lambie and others saying, well, that's good. You know, they've spent enough time in detention, let them, even though they came here illegally, and there are people waiting in refugee camps, and there'll be people waiting in Syrian refugee camps after the earthquake for years to come trying to get access to our shores. They won't be able to get here because there's only a certain number of people we can take. The wet behind the ears Immigration Minister Andrew Giles will announce today that inviting TPV and Safe Haven Enterprise visa holders who arrived before Operation Sovereign Borders commenced in 2013 to apply for permanent residency with family reunion rights and a pathway to citizenship. The Australians confirmed TPVs will stay on the statute book, so they're there, leaving them to be made available as a future deterrent to people smuggling operations while avoiding a messy political debate over the toxic issue that dogged, I guess, the Rudd and Gillard governments. They say, now, you know what happened. Under Rudd, Rudd, they couldn't stem the boats. Chris Bowen was in charge, couldn't stem the boats. Change of government, in comes Tony Abbott, Scott Morrison, the late Senator Jim Molan, when he wasn't a senator. They stopped the boats with Operation Sovereign Borders. Jim was the architect of that, and Peter Dutton continued the good work later on. Anyway, the government briefed Indonesian, Malaysian and Sri Lankan officials last week on the policy change, ensuring that the nations from where most asylum boats depart were not caught by surprise. In other words, they're saying, what we're doing is we're opening our shores on the northwestern coast again. We're just warning you to keep an eye out for them. Well, no. I've been telling you for a month or more now that Royal Australian Navy vessels have been dispatched to Darwin, up off North Queensland, moving across to, of course, north of Darwin, in preparation for what they know is going to occur. They know what's going to happen. And by allowing, as well of all of this, the reintroduction for these people, family reunions, well, that's the sign to, of course, the people smugglers in Indonesia and Sri Lanka, but mainly Indonesia, we're open for business. We're open for business. Now, I don't know what Anthony Albanese doesn't get about this. I thought he was a smart fella. But the more I see of him, the less confident I am of my observations that he's a smart fella. Now, the former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd abolished the Howard government temporary protection visas and offshore processing in 2008. So this time they've kept offshore processing but got rid of the TPVs. And we know what happened. 820 boats carrying more than 50,000 people, and we've got thousands dying at sea. We don't know how many died at sea because you can't keep a record of those people who perish in the middle of the ocean. A senior Labor source said there was now a palpable nervousness within the government that it could face a similar situation. The election commitment was very clear, but some are worried about this. It's going to go back to where we were with Rudd and Julia Gillard. The coalition will go on the attack, arguing the abolition of the TPVs will remove a key pillar of Operation Sovereign Borders, and it will. It will. And it's as clear as day. It's going to force what happened. The last time they did it under Kevin Rudd, we know what happened. 820 boats, 50,000 people. And they're going to roll the dice again and think it's not going to happen. I mean, for God's sake. And not just giving them permanent protection by giving them a visa and an entree to residency and therefore citizenship. They're also saying, bring out aunt, uncle, nan, pop, cousins, bring them all over. So what does that tell people who are, in a position to pay $20,000 US to the people smugglers to get here? beauty. Because even if there's a change of government next time there's a federal election, they're here. And then a subsequent Labor government in 8 years will say, oh no, okay, family reunion, back you come. I mean, what doesn't Anthony Albanese get about all of this? I mean, there's a very, I find myself at odds on many venues with Andrew Bolt. That doesn't mean he's always right and I'm always right. It means that sometimes I'm wrong and he's wrong. But he's written a piece today. Paul Erickson must have torn his hair out to hear Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's latest announcement as the country plunges to possible recession. Now, Mr Albanese is going to be the first Prime Minister to take part in the gay and lesbian Mardi Gras. I don't have a problem with that. If he wants to take part in it, that's fine. But according to Andrew Bolt, I mean, he was told by the Labor Party president as recently as 4 days before the announcement, Erickson, he said, look, you people, he was talking to the Prime Minister and the MPs, the federal MPs in Labor. He's the national president. 4 days earlier, he told the Prime Minister and the room full of Labor MPs to come back to planet Earth. Could they please start talking about what's actually worrying the electorate? He added, the cost of living. You must look like you are responding to this first and foremost. That is where people are. That's where people expect you to be. And yet, I mean, we're talking about The Voice. We're talking about the Prime Minister going, I mean, the announcement was, I'm going to be the first PM to go to the gay and lesbian Mardi Gras, not a problem. But we do have other issues. And we didn't have to make a big deal about his going. He'd just go. Like, all the other people that go. Police officers go. People who support gay and lesbian people, they go. Footballers go. A whole range of people go who are not either gay or lesbian. But they support the gay and lesbian Mardi Gras. We didn't have the Prime Minister grandstanding saying, oh, I'm going. When his president told him 4 days before that, really, you need to start worrying about other things. Start worrying about the big ticket items like how people are going to pay their mortgages. Now, I picked up the paper on the weekend, the Daily Telegraph, nearly fell out of the chair. Now, this is from the other side of politics, Matt Keane. Now, here's another bloke I thought was relatively smart, but I may have that wrong as well. At a time when both Chris Minns and the New South Wales Premier having a blue with the mining industry, because the mining industry want, obviously, things to be a little different and for things to happen that, will help the mining industry, which is a very big ticket item when it comes, of course, to employment, particularly in those mining areas in New South Wales and Queensland, but also the fact that in New South Wales alone, it pumped $16.7 billion into the state's economy. And the criticism is that both Perrottet and Minns, they could face electoral wrath of all these miners if the booming resources sector continues to be held back. They pumped almost $17 billion into the state's economy. They employ 31,000 full-time workers. And heaven knows how many other people depend on mining in those towns and cities across rural New South Wales and Queensland. So what do we get from Matt Keane? Powering up electric vehicles will become easier for New South Wales commuters and people living in apartments, with a re-elected New South Wales government promising to increase the number of charges from 1,000 to 30,000. They say electric vehicles are expected to make up 50% of new car sales by 2030. I'll believe that when it happens. The number of charges would be increased by, 29,000. The Treasurer and Energy Minister, Matt Keane, said strata laws would also be reformed to make it easier for people who don't have access to off-street parking to charge their cars. I mean, who's going to pay for that? The body corporate? So you've got an apartment building with 100 apartments, you say to them, there are 10 people here with electric cars, and you're being slugged, $4,000 each, so we can take the very limited car spaces we have and make them available to the 10 people in the building with electric cars, or the 20 people of unless there's 99 people with electric cars, you're whistling in the wind. You can't put a levy on unit holders, and we're talking about apartments that are 20, 30 and 40 years old, let alone the more recent ones that don't have the provision for electric cars. But here's the rub. We want all drivers to be able to recharge whenever and wherever they do, whether it's on a road trip, coming to or from home to work. Listen, Matt, I'm only a broken-down choir boy, old mate. But where do you think the bloody power's going to come from for these 30,000 chargers? Would I be right in saying, well, we can't get it from wind, we can't get it from sun, so we'll need coal-fired power stations or gas-fired power stations so we can give the electricity to the people driving the electric cars? I mean, it's as if they run on thin air. I mean, you know, people buy them, and at the moment they get subsidised or they get free, you know, charging stations, you know, provided by a whole range of people, you know. Tesla have got their own, NRMA, and they're starting to charge for it. But it's not run on, your car doesn't work on thin air, it's run on electricity. And it needs to be recharged. And where do you get the power from? Well, the same as when you turn the lights on, or you turn the stove on if it's electric or gas as the case may be, or the same as you turn the TV on, or the same as you charge your phone with, it comes from electricity. And we don't have enough solar nor wind power to power what we've got now, let alone 30,000 charging stations. God, strike me pink. Fair dinkum.